FarmBoys podcast now has merch available. We've got t-shirts, sweatshirts, high quality, soft. For more information, email us at farmboysapparel@gmail.com. Smash that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and like the video.
That on April 7th, right, when Judge Wilkins votes on this House case with her final ruling, that we're all preparing for this to pass, and that starting July 1st, we, the colleges, can pay our athletes $20.5 million in a year. And so
what are the top five attributes? It can be skills, it can be whatever you want it to be. The top five for hopefully some young girls out there, or even transfers that want to go to CSU. What are the top five things you want or that you look for in a volleyball player? Is it jump touch? Is it great blocking, great digging? Like whatever you want it to be, the top five. This is a FarmBoys podcast with Mountain West Coach of the Year, two-time Emily Kohan.
I am Emily Kohan. I am the Colorado State volleyball head coach, and this will be my third season coming up as a head coach and my 10th season overall here at Colorado State. I am from Colorado. I'm from a tiny town called Swink, Colorado, and my dad's a cattle rancher in the southeast corner of the state. And volleyball is very important here, as you can see in my background. We are sixth in the country in attendance, and there's not very many places where women's college volleyball is treated the way that we're treated here at CSU. And so it's a really an honor to be able to take over this legendary program and continue to build it in a new college landscape with some new obstacles. We had a great season this past season. We went to our 32nd NCAA tournament as a program, and we won our conference, the Mountain West. It's our last year in the Mountain West this coming year, and then we moved to the Pac-12. And it was a great season led by five really awesome seniors, and really I just got out of their way, and I was the coach that got out of the way the most this season. But we were staff of the year, coach of the year this season, and it was really fun to see those fifth year seniors develop and get the senior year that everybody kind of dreams of. I've always supported my bosses in getting coach of the year. Again, I've always said it's staff of the year, and so all the coach of the year accolades are the program that's able to, I think, have a really holistic model to make it all work. I as a player, I was second in career digs when I left Iowa by one dig. So I played in 200 matches of volleyball and was one dig short. But I think it was a great learning lesson as I moved into coaching. And I think my biggest accolades are the way my players develop and the awards that they get as well. So we just had our 42nd All-American here at Colorado State this past season in Malaya Jones, and she rewrote the record books for all of her attacking. And every time the players get All-Conference and All-American awards, I think those are my favorite moments as a coach.
What do you do to identify and evaluate potential recruits? Let's say during their club careers or high school careers, what specific things do you look for on the court as well as off the court?
Yeah, I think, there's an obvious level of physicality you need to have to be in top level gyms, right? The higher up you go in rankings and divisions, that the bigger, harder, faster that any of the sports athletes are. But, for volleyball and attacking, right? How high are you touching? How many miles per hour are you hitting? And some of the other things we can teach you. Like we've had a great success with raw athletes that maybe are not the best volleyball players, and believing that we can teach you how to be a great volleyball player in our gym. And so we really do, first and foremost, look at some of the intangible athletic measurables as one of the baselines to get in any position. I think academics are getting more and more important. So next year, as every sport moves into the equivalency model instead of a head count sport, it becomes important that you're a good student and you can take away some of the scholarship burden from a volleyball, the scholarship count of volleyball, and the academics can pick up a piece of that. And so more and more than ever are we asking kids about their transcripts and being able to achieve some academic scholarships here at CSU as we move forward into equivalency. We always do reference calls for who they are as teammates. Our culture is really strong, and we call coaches, we call your high school coach, we call your college, your club coach. Sometimes we'll call other sports coaches in the area that have played against you, and to understand how you're perceived as a competitor and as having sportsmanship. And I think everybody can always be great when you are the big fish, but when you come into college and there's other people, as talented as you, and you might not be a starter right away, are you going to be able to fit into our culture and what our core values are? And so we really do go above and beyond to evaluate the whole person as a student, again, as a teammate, and then as a volleyball player, obviously as well. But I think we've done a great job maintaining a really competitive culture that people love each other while they are winning championships.
So I didn't want to divert necessarily this early, but I am going to. You talk about academics being very important, and obviously kids go to college to theoretically get an education, get a degree. With NIL coming though, and it seems like college athletics are getting more and more professional. Kids are signing for millions of dollars, and now all of a sudden next year, according to our last podcast from Coach Wilson over at LMU, the college can now start paying players rather than just NIL money. So what impact is that going to have on academics? Are kids going to just try to go to college now just to get paid and play? Or how do you think that's going to affect academics?
So I think the term, what starts in July of 2025 is what we're calling rev distribution. And the House case has to pass in order for this to really kick into place. But I think a lot of people are saying that on April 7th, right, when Judge Wilkins votes on this House case with her final ruling, that we're all preparing for this to pass, and that starting July 1st, the colleges, can pay our athletes $20.5 million in a year. And so each school is able to divvy up that money however they want. Volleyball at some schools will be important enough to get a chunk of it, right? Some schools will not prioritize volleyball and they'll get nothing. And some schools are going to not opt into paying any of their athletes this rev share. And so you're going to see a very unstandardized template of what we have known to be, hey, every school has 12 scholarships, and that's what it is. That all of a sudden the spectrum of what different athletes are going to be offered for any sport is going to be very different, right? Oklahoma is very important softball program, so I assume Oklahoma softball will get a chunk of this, right? I feel lucky that at Colorado State, volleyball is very important, and we will be able to, I think, find a model that keeps us nationally relevant. And so again, I think it's a really confusing time for recruits, because what they hear certain players might get from offers of certain schools is going to be very different than other schools in that conference, or definitely within Division I, how that's going to work. And so your question of how is this going to impact academics, I think volleyball has always holistically had really good student athletes, and I don't think that's going to change. Will some of these student athletes be making more money than what their historical scholarships or even these NIL payments have been? Yes, that is probably true. But I really see volleyball still treating academics pretty importantly, and maybe even, again, can they get their masters paid for? Can they save these rev distribution payments to buy a house when they're done with this, right? There's never been a better time to be a student athlete, because all of these rule changes are empowering the student athletes and giving them a lot of options, which, like it or hate what they are, if you're a student athlete, it's a great time to play college sports.
What are the top five attributes? It can be skills, it can be whatever you want it to be. The top five for hopefully some young girls out there, or even transfers that want to go to CSU. What are the top five things you want, or that you look for in a volleyball player? Is it jump touch? Is it great blocking, great digging? Like whatever you want it to be, the top five.
Physicality, in no particular order, really.
Okay.
Physicality, and that means different things for different positions, right? A libero's physicality is different than middle blockers, but physicality.
Yep.
Your work ethic. Are you willing to be coachable and get better?
Okay.
Your teammateship. Are you well respected? And sometimes well respected is not the most beloved person, but are you well respected on that team?
Right.
Your holistic way you handle life. Are you going to be on time? Are you going to multitask? You're extremely busy in this program. Are you going to be able to keep up with all the things that we ask you to do? And then, do you love volleyball? Right? This is a job, and you are showing up every day for 4 or 5 years. And do you love this enough to get through the hard days?
Okay, I want to ask on the physicality part. What part of and we'll split it up here. A front row player versus a back row. What are the top three things for a front row versus the top three things on a back row? And we're talking physicality only. Are we talking, strength, vertical? What do you think the top three for the front versus the back is?
Yeah, I think front row players, how high are you playing above the net? Okay. So touch, length, that's how high you're playing. How hard can you hit the ball? So even in a miles per hour. This has been a big evolution. If you talk to other big volleyball coaches, people are now recruiting arms over just jump touch. So Can you terminate at a miles per hour it helps you get out of jail a lot of times, right? So, and then again, if you're an outside hitter, right, you got to be able to ball handle a little bit. So I think your volleyball IQ of how you read the game and for your position specific, like soft touch skills.
Cool. What about a back row?
Yeah. I think how well you can pass if you are a mini, right? Passing will get you on the court. So kind of your passing statistics or your mechanics of passing, of seeing the game and what you look like with a quiet platform. So how well you can pass, how speedy you are. So can you cover range, and you're pretty athletic or big, right? There are some big liberos now, but how much range can you cover for your height? And then for that particular libero skill, serving and setting, right? We're starting to evaluate serving and setting. Serving's turning into such a weapon in the women's game that, again, you got to have a miles per hour on that thing. You can't serve free balls.
What do you think are some critical recruiting timelines for high school players? I know the rules have changed, and man, it's hard to even try to look at freshmen or sophomores, it seems like now. But coming from you, what are your critical timelines for looking at kids playing high school and club volleyball?
Yeah, I think for Division I volleyball, June 15th is this big date, right? And this year in 2025, June 15th for the 2027 class is this big, like, coaches are finally allowed to directly talk to you and make some verbal offers. And you watch some kids make their decision very soon after June 15th. And so I think that's probably the biggest, like, magical day that those in between sophomore and juniors really escalate their timeline. That being said, there's tons of things that happen after and even before that June 15th date. I think in general, like in this club season for those 16s, those 2027s, they are going to camps in the middle of this summer. They're starting to send all these emails to college coaches, right? This is very active email time. We can't necessarily write back, but we get lots of the highlight videos and here's what I'm doing with my life and who my family is. And I'll tell you that when you personalize the email, and I know your grandma lives in Fort Collins, or my mom played Division I volleyball, or, you really tie it back to like what your story and particular interest is in this program, that it means all the more for us, right? We actually have some tags in our database of like, this kid is legitimately interested in us and not just spamming it out to 500 coaches. So I think that can be a really important thing to be doing from now until June 15th for those younger kids. And then after June 15th, those summer camps I think are big, right? That you can go and get to know the coaches and learn from the gym styles and see the campuses a little bit. And starting August 1st, you can do campus visits. And I think a lot of those 2027s will do visits in the fall, right? And be able to go to some of the games and get to see what a day in the life of a college athlete is in the fall. And that August 1st date is the time that opens the doors for the paid visits, or you can do unofficial visits too.
So a kid wants to go to CSU. It's their dream school. How early do you and your staff start looking at them? And I guess what, in your mind, could a recruit do that would just kind of be, I don't know, the perfect scenario, starting from whatever age you think they should start to when you actually start looking at them?
Yeah, I'll go kind of backwards. There's definitely still some 2026s, so the 17s age group that are still in our pipeline that we're evaluating.
Okay.
The 27s, we are definitely the sophomores. We are definitely looking at hard right now and trying to build our tiered ranking list going into June 15th of what we're going to do with that class. 2028s, those freshmen, we watch a little bit, especially locally, like, we'll definitely start building a little bit of a 28 list. And then the 29s and 30s, those junior high kids, we don't watch a ton of them right now. And some programs do a little bit more of this, but we'll tag the local kids that are, in that gym with our commits or things like that. But we have been known to watch 8th graders every once in a while, but it's not our priority list.
Okay. So when should a kid really start, in your mind, if they want to be a Division I player, what do you think the perfect timeline is? Do they need to start reaching out to colleges as early as 8th grade, 9th grade? Or, is that 10th grade year kind of the sweet spot?
I think 10th grade is definitely the sweet spot where you're not behind. It's like, again, we get hundreds of emails every week from 10th graders. I think that that's totally normal. I think it's okay as a ninth grader to start sending it out and just self-reflecting of what are you looking for? You might not know what you want to study, right? It might be a vet in ninth grade, and in 10th grade, it's, I don't know, psychology, right? And so, but you can start the process, which I think is really important to self-reflect even as a ninth grader.
So how do you balance the incoming freshmen with the transfer portal then? Do you have a strategy where you're looking less at incoming freshmen, or has anything changed since that transfer portal is just blown up?
Yeah, I think different programs have way different philosophies on this. We have stuck to pretty traditional recruiting model of bringing in 4 or 5 freshmen, and then augmenting needs from the transfer portal, as opposed to building your whole starting lineup with the portal kids. And some of the high school kids are your practice squad. So again, we've found that as some of the bigger programs are going so transfer portal heavy, that we've been able to find a lot of traction with an even higher level high school aged kid that maybe previously some of those top 15 programs would have looked at, but now they're almost just waiting for the transfer portal to build their rosters. And so I think CSU volleyball is well positioned in that high school space to keep getting really, really high level kids.
Do you think that puts you at any type of a disadvantage, since usually they'll transfer players are older, have more experience, that these other schools are getting, and you're dealing with maybe more raw young talent?
Again, we're not like, I have 3 transfers in my gym right now from this past December transfer portal. So we have some transfer portal kids. One of them's a 5th year. That's why we went after her. We graduated 5 5th year seniors, and then bring in these 5 freshmen. And we were like, oh my gosh, we're going to be really young. We'd like some maturity in this transfer portal. I need 5 5th years, right? Some programs go like only grad transfer kids, but I wanted a couple of grandmas in the gym with my babies. And so we were strategic and kind of balancing out our roster youth with some of our transfer kids we got this year.
Okay, cool. Cool.
I've got a question that kind of goes along with that, Chris.
Yeah.
If you're seeing an athlete that is a dual athlete, what do you like to see as that other sport?
Oh man, I think track is always something that's easy to manage in the scheduling of things, right? The team sport of basketball can be hard because you're letting one team down when you miss something.
Yeah.
I think if you're in an individual sport like track or swimming, and if you miss that thing, it's only maybe impacting you more than like a whole team. So I think there's a lot of high jumpers, triple jumpers, sprinters. Track and volleyball have had a happy little marriage sometimes.
Not that I'm not trying to put in, well, my daughter, she's going to run track this year. So, and that's for the crossover, and for she's the kind of person that likes the gym. And I'm like, you like working out, like go to track. It's like every day's a workout, right? But here's another question for you. So I have 4 kids. My oldest is a daughter that's a freshman. And then I have a 6-year-old son, and then a 6th grade son, and then a 3rd grade daughter, and then a 4-year-old son. But I'm always surprised with like basketball. Basketball is something that I know pretty well, and I've always been surprised how skilled these young kids are. But one of the questions I have is that if the over specialization has a negative impact over like the long term of a kid's like development, either physically, mentally, or from skill level. Like in your opinion, do we focus on growing up in a small town? I assume you probably played more than just volleyball.
I did.
Do you think we over specialize too much nowadays?
I mean, I think the easy answer is yes, but also there's never been more pressure for the commitment of what a time for one sport, right? Growing up in the 90s, or even in small town Colorado, there's a 1.5 hour practice, right after school, and I didn't have to drive anywhere. And now I watch families literally driving hours to get to this club practice that is 4 days a week, that travels every single weekend. And in the supply and demand curve of time, I don't know where something else fits into that. And so that's where I feel really bad that from a holistic answer, it's like, yeah, we want you to do more sports and we love multi-sport athletes, but how does a family logistically make that work? I don't know. And it's also getting more and more expensive with these sports as well, that, I was doing all these sports in high school, and in my junior year, there was a discussion with my family of like, you have to pick, you are going to die if you try to go at this pace this long. And, there was a mental mental reprieve when I gave up a couple of my sports and I got to specialize, and it happened later. I probably won't let my kid specialize till a little bit later. I'll make her dabble in a lot of different things, but there does come a time where just from a financial and time commitment space, there's limited resources for that.
Yeah. Do you, like, the players that you've coached, do you see like a benefit from some of these athletes being multi-sport athletes? Or, I mean, I know there's so many variables that go into it, right? The kid's personality, the family situation, just the local situation there in town. Is it easy to manage everything? But like overall in the long term, like with girls that you've coached, have you seen an advantage with any real true advantage maybe that you can point to, saying like, hey, if there's a dual sport athlete that is kind of serious with dual sports longer, is that overall beneficial for your college volleyball player?
I think I love dual sport athletes. They're competitive usually, right? They love just competing in anything. And they're usually really great, like solution oriented thinkers that learn how to like find their own game plans, I'm going to call them, and like break things down at a really high level. I think sometimes in super specialization, they're just little robots. Like you bump, you set, you spike. That is what we do. And some of these dual sport athletes that have just gotten out on courts and figured it out, like they have really great hand-eye coordination, and they are their own best coaches sometimes because they've had to learn to win in a variety of different ways in sports. And so that's usually my favorite thing about dual sport athletes is they're great coaches on themselves and they just figure it out.
Here's another question I'll get off of it. Do you think there's any like kids that are just specialized, like we're going hardcore into it, it's going to be volleyball? Is there any connection with like overdoing it and bodies like breaking down earlier or sooner because of that? Because not giving, like, are the kids getting enough like time off?
Yeah.
If they're like super serious in it? Like, I don't know if you...
Yeah, I think over my 15 years, we see more and more chronic injuries showing up in our gym before we even get them, right? So when you talk about like a little bit of the load management and when you are playing multiple sports and you're doing just different motions and working out, you get some chronic knee, back, lower back, shoulder injuries if you don't do it well. That's not saying people can play year-round volleyball and do it well, but you got to do some prehab and you got to treat your body well. We give our players month off breaks, right? We get December basically off and we get May basically off, and high school kids are not getting that for the most part right now. And so it's something you have to monitor. And again, when they get to us, like, what is this plan, a periodization plan over a whole year going to be to make sure they're playing their best volleyball when it matters? And right now, I don't know when that matters for high school kids, because is it in high school season or is it that club championship level? Like, what is their cyclical periodization? And there's not a lot of sports science going into managing their calendars right now.
Emily, I was curious with your growing up in southeastern Colorado. How did growing up on a ranch help you to become a better player yourself and a better leader now as a coach?
Yeah, I think about this a lot. I come from a lifestyle where there are no days off, right? I remember being little and it's Christmas and you want to open your presents and, hey, the cows got to eat on Christmas. They don't understand that it's Christmas. And, my father is an incredibly hardworking man that we didn't take family vacation. We worked every day. My mom is in education. She was a principal and a teacher. She loved her job. Both of my parents loved their jobs, and it is what we did. It's still what we do, right? When my family comes to visit me, we watch me work, right? So I think I have maybe an unrealistic view of what hard work is, and I'm willing to work very hard. And it's funny because in my own family, there was always this joke that like I was not the hardest worker, and then the second I get anywhere else outside of my family, everyone's like, "You're the hardest worker I've ever met," and I'm like, "You should see my dad and my mom and my sister," And so I think that's the biggest thing is I just grew up with role models that know how to work hard, and I work very hard. So that's probably my biggest takeaway. And what your lens of hard work is, it is physical labor in non-ideal conditions, right? If it's snowing or if it's 120, like it doesn't have to go work hard.
How did how does that make you be a better leader today? Watching what your mom and your dad went through to like provide for the family, like how does that make you a great volleyball coach today?
I think all my players, I think everyone that's ever worked with me would say I'm very dependable. I don't miss a day of work. Right? And again, there's some clapback sometimes about taking care of your own mental health about this, but I'm extremely dependable because I grew up where you didn't have a choice, right? If you didn't show up and feed the cows and do the daily tasks, like you weren't gonna be able to feed yourself. So I show up very consistently. Not only just show up, but I think I have a very consistent output for everything. And I really do believe consistent leaders, if I'm consistent at the top, it makes the people in the rungs underneath me be able to know how to show up and that they learn to be more consistent as well. Because I don't think there's a ton of special sauce in this. I really don't. I think you show up consistently and you work your tail off and you treat people well and good things are going to happen.
I wanted to ask this question, and because knowing that you've grown up on a ranch, you talked about your work ethic. I think when I was growing up, being able to physically do something like was important for the success of the family business, right? Being able to like get out and physically like load up a trailer full of, we had hand bales. Did you have hand?
My dad's since moved to big bales that he forklifts, but we had to like snap the 75-pound bales. So
yes. And so we'd have to feed the cows. We'd have to load up the truck with hay or with straw or whatever it was. And so there's definitely a physical element to it. We did like in irrigating the crops, we had flood irrigation. We had a lot of siphon tubes. And again, I mean, it's a physical job, right? And so how did that aspect help you going into sports, right? You're going from physical work to physical work, and what was that experience like as you there in your as you played high school ball, and then as you went on to Iowa? What did you learn through that process about yourself, but also about your teammates?
Yeah, again, I think people have always been like, oh, Emily works hard and Emily's really tough, right? Again, I do not quit. Like there's other kids that maybe won the genetic lottery over me in terms of height and speed and size, but I do not quit on things. And so, you show up for conditioning drills or, it's 900 degrees in Iowa in August when you're doing preseason and you're super sweaty. Like it's a mental toughness thing that we say this in our program all the time. The only way to get better at doing hard things is by doing hard things. And now even as a mom, right, I have these two young kids and I don't know, one of them doesn't sleep well at night at all. And there's many times in the middle of the night that I'm like, Emily, you do hard things. This is what you do. And so here I am almost 40, right? And I'm reflecting on all the hard things, whether or not they're relevant for that moment. But I know I can do hard things because of my childhood, because of my athlete days, and because as a coach, I've had to go through hard things and I didn't quit, right? That's what all my bosses would say on that too is, Chris, like we had a season at Oregon State, we were 0-20 in the Pac-12 one year. And the next year we went to the Sweet 16. And again, I think we showed a lot of diligence of like, I can do hard things and I'm not going to quit on you.
Would your mom, would she be active with the ranch when she wasn't doing her education?
Yeah. And she did hard things in other ways too, where she would wake up at 3 a.m. to drive us to our things and we'd sleep in the back seat. And my mom would be so like, she'd burn the candle at both ends in terms of the time commitment to us. And I'm incredibly fortunate that I had great role models. And sometimes I recruit players who don't have that in their family life, but I am that for them, right? I bring my kids in at 6 a.m. to weights, and we have these new transfers in our gym right now. And they're like, you made your kids get up at 6 a.m. And I go, you got up at 6 a.m. Trust me, they can get up at 6 a.m. They'll be all right. So I think sometimes our players who don't maybe have the familial reference can watch me and my family do it and know that there are examples of that. Yeah.
Oh, Emily, your personality obviously carries over to the team. So what happens when you see a recruit that you may just really want? All the physical attributes are there. I mean, you've looked at this kid and you're just like, wow. But then you find out maybe she's kind of a Barbie. Does that turn you away? Do you think, okay, I can toughen this kid up? Like, how would something like that affect your culture? Maybe this kid's a 5-star recruit and it's like, man, this kid could help us get to that next level. How would that work?
Ooh, I don't know if there's an absolute answer to this. this. I mean, we've had many instances where there's kids that from the eye test of watching them and even talking to them on the phone, you're like, yes. And then they come to campus or you get far enough down the relationship process where, again, the type of kid that I want in my program isn't what you're talking about with a Barbie. And they ask like these questions of, well, I really only want to charter to flights, right? Or like if it's only about money coming up, right? Like how much exactly, like what can you do for me? One of the things we say in our program is your experience is about what you give, not what you get. And so what are you going to give to this program, right? How much are you willing to give? And I've crossed a lot of people off the list, even when they come on visits, to where you've got them here. And if you got them here, it usually means you want them. And you're like, hey, actually, thank you for your time. This isn't going to be a great fit. I don't feel like you're going to give us what we need, even though we might, have some strong volleyball gets out of you. And so, it's a privileged place to be able to have options. Again, we're a really strong program where we have a lot of options. But again, we try to do a holistic review of who's getting invited into this program.
So you said something I think is really important to any kids that play volleyball, obviously, that are watching, and just in life in general. You want a kid, you bring them in, and because of something you see in their personality, this is what I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, you are saying, okay, this kid is a stud, they may make our program better, but that personality does not fly here. Sorry, we don't need you.
Yeah. And sometimes we ask our team for feedback. So sometimes they hang out with our team. We have a recruit coming tomorrow and she'll go to dinner and hang out with our team without us tomorrow night. And they come back from that and they have red flags from that. We really do try to honor the culture of just saying like, hey, we're going to have to move in another direction.
So the transfer portal is a huge deal right now, right? So how do you deal with kids that you're bringing in from the transfer portal? Are you trying to do all these background checks, like you said, with the recruits? Because you're not able to have them come and do the official visit before you sign them, are you? Or are you looking at kids in the transfer portal that maybe you've recruited in the past and didn't get?
We definitely still try to do background check on them. And I've been very fortunate. I think I have great relationships in the volleyball community that, our setter that just graduated came from Arizona, that I call the Arizona coaches and I talk with them and I really try to get feedback from their previous staff of what that was like, knowing that there's two sides to the story and I got to ferret out what maybe a little bit of reality is and some of why a kid is leaving, calling their high school coaches or club coaches still, what club did they play for and doing a little bit of that background check. It does happen fast, but every single transfer that we've had, we've still done some due diligence on.
Emily, I was going to kind of take it back with, I get, just about your, the way you were raised, where you were raised. How are you trying to instill with you have two daughters, with your daughters and with girls that you coach? How are you trying to take some of what you learned growing up in a unique, in such a unique, I'm going to call it opportunity, growing up on a ranch? How do you try to instill some of that same, some of those same principles with your girls that are growing up in a much different situation, and also helping the girls you coach, the women you coach, to learn some of that as well? I
think first it shows up with how I show up, so I got to emulate it, right? I think my two daughters, who they're 4 and almost 2 now, that you could ask them this, they all the time they're like, no whining, no crying, get the job done, and we're going into weights at 6 a.m. and I'm like, hey, I'm going to remind you, no whining, no crying, we're going to get the job done here. So the way you consistently show up in those language moments and in the hard times, giving very specific feedback of, hey, this is what we do here. And whether that's my own daughters or my team, right? We have 5 newbies in our gym that came in January, and I meet with them almost every week right now. And I'm like, hey, these are our expectations in our program. You are to get at least a 3.0. You go to every class, right? If you are going to be late or something happens, you got to communicate. And again, I just have to it's like hygiene. It's like working out. It's like anything. You got to consistently do things every single week and remind people what they're trying to achieve and give them the space to be able to do that. And when it does go right, I got to celebrate that. And when it goes wrong, I have to take a moment and I need to give them some very honest feedback in those moments of what the expectations are and what the better decision is going to be going forward. But I think we're very clear in our communication with my daughters or in this program of what expectations are. And then what is the process to get to those expectations, right? And in the first couple of mess ups, I will always say, okay, I don't know if I communicated this clearly. but here's what we expect in this program. I'll take the first couple ones on me, right? But after those expectations have been clearly communicated, if there's mess ups, then there's going to be repercussions. And so, even with my daughter, sometimes I'm like, I don't know if you heard me, but it was no whining, no crying, and I hear crying. So let's clean this up right now.
That's awesome. Just out of curiosity, when you went to Iowa, were you happy to be leaving home and getting away from the ranch, or was it, or did you not really know at the time, or were you sad to be leaving home? I mean, obviously there's probably some sadness there with the family, but were you happy to be getting away from the ranch, or did you know at that time kind of what a unique upbringing that was?
I feel like my story was a little cliche. Like I was the small town kid that wanted out, right?
Yeah.
I wanted anywhere but Colorado, and it took me a while to realize how great Colorado is and how great my family and everything was.
Yeah.
But in my recruiting process, I wanted to go somewhere on an adventure away and kind of spread my own wings. And so I was really excited to go on my own adventure and do my own thing, and to be away from, just the farm life, even though it was Iowa, now that I realize that, but
Yeah.
it was great to do a different adventure.
What if you were not one of the best volleyball coaches in the country? If you were not a volleyball coach, what would you be doing? Financial advising. Why?
I'm a super geek. I love teaching. I do love teaching. And I've always said if I didn't coach volleyball, I would teach something. And I think I'm very passionate about the freedom that having some financial foundation underneath you can give, just in terms of options. I'm a super geek in this space in my personal life, but I did investment banking before I was a volleyball coach, right? So I've always, I dabble in it, in helping other volleyball coaches sometimes, but it's just something I'm passionate about.
I'm in private equity real estate. So we invest in the group I work with now. We invest in multifamily properties in the Southeast, but kind of a connection there.
Mm-hmm.
So something that we like to do on here, Emily, and funny enough, not everybody's got to do this, but I think you are fun to do this, is called the FarmBoys Podcast Lightning Round. So I'm just going to rattle off questions, and it's literally like a one-word answer. So not a lot of thought to this, just something snappy, and we'll see how it turns out. So are you ready for the FarmBoys Podcast Lightning Round?
Bring it.
Okay, first question. What is the number one thing high school players can do to grab a coach's attention?
Be a great communicator.
Which volleyball skill is the most underrated at the collegiate level?
Passing.
What's one trait that immediately stands out in a recruit?
How hard you hit the ball.
What's the biggest misconception high school athletes have about being recruited?
That it's going to be ponies and rainbows when you get here.
Which off-season activity best prepares players for college volleyball?
Working out in the weight room.
What's the first thing you notice when watching a recruit's highlight reel?
How hard they hit the ball.
And we'll do one more here. In one word, what's the key to success in collegiate volleyball?
Consistent daily progress.